Welcome back to the Business Roundtable Podcast. I am your host, David Carr, founder of Steward Your Business, where we help leaders and business owners scale with clarity, alignment, and really sustainability, long-term sustainability. And I'm really excited today. We're going to talk about a subject that many business owners think they know about, but in reality, they often get wrong, and that is public relations, PR. And my guest is going to be unpacking this, because what I found is a lot of people in PR, or they were thinking about PR as placements, they're thinking about getting featured, getting visibility. But I'm going to pose the question. I'm going to have our guests break it down a little bit more for us. But what if the issue isn't just visibility? We all like visibility, but what if that message isn't really clear enough to be amplified? And that's really what we want to unpack today. And I'm joined with a fantastic new guest to the podcast, Ronica Cleary, founder of and CEO of Cleary Strategies. And she is actually a former White House correspondent. She's somebody who helps leaders not just get the media, but actually build the strategy behind it. And so, Ronica, I want to welcome you to the podcast. I'm super excited to have you here. And I want to just ask you right out of the gate, like, what do you see? What are people getting wrong about PR?
Well, thank you so much for having me. That introduction was awesome. And we try to not open with the negative things, but let's just dive in. And because, you want people to feel good. And obviously,
Yes.
Some of the things you said, of course, you want increased visibility, you want placements. But if you have that without a strategy behind it and without a real direction and focus on what the end goal is, it can just become noise, right? Mm-hmm. And there are what are called booking agencies out there, and a booking agency will just book you placements without strategy or purpose or vision behind them. And I think the real difference when you have a PR agency and who is building a strategy for you as you navigate those placements and features and opportunities, you can have an end goal in mind that you are working towards. That, of course, is visibility, but what does increased visibility mean for you as a leader? And what is the goal you're hoping to get out of it? So I think the idea of, sure, you want some bookings, you want to maybe be on a podcast yourself, you want an opportunity to speak on TV or be quoted in a magazine, but without any direction or purpose or vision behind it. As I said, I really think a great way to think of it, it's just more noise. And that's the last thing that you want to be as a founder and CEO, is just creating noise.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, what I heard you say, Ronica, is people are maybe coming to you, they think they need that, but what I'm hearing you say is hey, think a little differently about this. And probably they're coming to people, like you say, getting placements or going out there and they're spending a lot of money and maybe not getting what they really want. And they're like, well, hey, this is not the right answer. I want to give you credit because you and your team reached out to me and you're like, hey, we identified the Business Roundtable Podcast as a way of reaching business owners and leaders. And I really appreciate you guys coming on, and you, Ronica, coming and leading your organization, because you took the time and the effort. And we even had a pre-call. We're like trying to make sure we're in alignment, and it speaks a lot to how you show up. But what would you say is to that business owner then, like I said, where they're, where you're seeing them come to you? Is there other things that they're missing? They're asking you, like they haven't thought through this, like they're like, oh, come help me, and get that message out there.
I love what you just said, though. I mean, just you sort of saw us work.
Yes.
And, I'm a client of the agency, if you will, right? Because we are for our agency all the time, and I'm the spokesperson. So what we are doing on behalf of me as the founder is often what we do for our clients. And so the idea is, you're not just, there's an expression in PR, like it's the old school PR, it's called spray and pray. And the idea is you just pitch hundreds and hundreds of outlets and you pray that it lands. And that while you do need to send a lot of pitches, right, there is value in reaching a lot of people with your pitch and idea, because it is hard to match. The idea is that there is a real thoughtfulness and strategy behind it. And that's what we really help our clients understand. I think a big misconception when they come in is that they feel, and this is really hard to say to people, they think that their business alone is newsworthy or interesting. And so the conversation that we have to navigate with them is to help them understand that it's very rare and difficult to get news and press for your business alone, right? There has to be something really unique, kind of a Cinderella rags to riches story, and an incredible amount of success that gets a business press coverage on its own. And so what a great PR agency can do for you is figure out, okay, if it's not going to be just my business alone, what is the expertise that I have? What is the mission that we deliver on? What is the way that we give back? What are the things that we do as an organization that give us a distinction besides just being a business, right? That you might be very successful, you might be growing, but unfortunately, those things are not newsworthy in and of themselves unless they are so extreme that you can't deny the newsworthiness of it. So I think that might be a misconception that people come to us with. And so we help them figure out and understand that there is so much more to making yourself an interesting and compelling guest and making yourself newsworthy, that we can help you navigate and understand the news cycle and how the newsrooms work. And that's why we lean into my background as a former journalist and a former White House correspondent. A lot of the people on my team are former journalists as well. And we all have that understanding of how newsrooms work. So when we're sending those, when we're building those pitches, when we're crafting the strategy, when we're reaching out to newsrooms and bookers and producers and whoever it may be, and writers and all of the different things, we understand what it is that they need to make that connection and be more successful on your behalf. And again, like I said in the beginning, keep in the back of our minds, and what's not just the goal of what the newsroom needs, what's your goal as a founder and a CEO to get to the next level and to be that meaningful thought leader that you know that you are capable of being, you have interesting and compelling things to say, but you can't figure out how to get someone to listen. And so it's putting all of those pieces together on their behalf, and helping them navigate the chaos that is modern media, because it really is, it's so different than it was even 5 to 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, I totally see that, Ronica. And to your point, I mean, you mentioned that leader getting clarity and what's important, how to get that into the world. Because I see that even internally in organizations I work with, is that there's a breakdown of like, how do we communicate that? So if you can't get that internally, you're going to have difficulty doing that externally. And I like how you brought up the whole news cycle, and people think, oh, I'm newsworthy. Unfortunately, what I find is what becomes newsworthy is the bad stuff that something went wrong. And that's important too, because you have to have a strategy and be clear, like, well, what's our unique approach? How are we addressing this? And I'm having a flashback, Ronica, back in the COVID days where everybody's line items were the same, almost as like mimicking each other. And like, we're doing this, we're doing being safe and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, we get that. I've heard it from a zillion times, but how is it unique to your business, or how are you handling it? And to your point, I think you're stepping back. What I hear you saying is, yes, we want exposure. We think we're newsworthy, but let's get clarity as to what resonates. And especially when you're talking about the people that are making the decisions, does that make sense to them? Like, does it like, oh, I can see, and why would I want to prioritize that story or that message over somebody else's? And you guys have lived this.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple things. And so, just thinking through the strategic nature of what you want to comment on is really important. I pitch myself, and my team builds lists for me, and we have a strategy for myself as a founder. And another thing to think about is, sometimes you think, okay, we need more things that we can pitch the founder on. We need more ways to make them interesting and compelling. Well, sometimes there are things that we deliberately and specifically don't want to pitch the founder on. And so there was an opportunity to provide some commentary, having like that they were looking for former attendees of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Now, this was before the tragic events that occurred that night. But this was in anticipation of it. There was going to be news coverage around it. And as I read a little more about the opportunity, I stopped myself, right? Even myself, I thought, oh, I would like to be on this program. I want to provide commentary. I've been to the dinner. I would have been a member of the White House Correspondents Association. And I said, wait a minute, this is really not strategically aligned with what I do today. And so I'm actually I don't want to do this, even if maybe I am a fit. And it's that pause with the strategy in mind that we can do on behalf of all of our clients, because it is easy to get wrapped up in the moment and the excitement of media, which is like very valid. I mean, it's fun.
Yes, absolutely.
And you to take a moment to say, okay, and that's actually a red flag when an agency will say, like, we guarantee X number of placements. Well, maybe you're in a crisis situation and there's a month where you don't want any placements, and you need really smart people to help you navigate that. And so that's why there's no like cookie cutter mold that's perfect or a black and white answer. And, you did bring up crisis, and helping your clients also think about crisis in advance through the lens of the
Mhm.
that can be such an important exercise. And I'm writing a piece on that right now. I
Mm.
contribute monthly to Inc. magazine online. And that's a piece that I'm writing because many people say, well, we can't anticipate the exact crisis. So why, we'll worry about what happens. But there's so much that can be done. So it's a whole pie, I guess, of different ideas and things
Mhm.
that will support the person or the company through. But the real distinction for us, just to really bring some clarity home, because these things, these ideas and terms kind of get tossed around and things get mushed together. The real distinction that we provide, though, is it's all through how you interact with the media alone, right? So,
Mm.
because there's also really important crisis communications for internal
Yep,
comms, right? How do you communicate
absolutely.
your employees? How do you communicate with your stakeholders? Those are all very different things to navigate. And so our expertise that we bring to the table is how do you communicate that crisis or that wonderful announcement, whatever, or that expertise or your mission driven brand, whatever it might be. How do you communicate that effectively with and through the media to the viewer or the consumer on the other side who knows you didn't pay for this. It's not an advertisement. It's more prestigious. We want to do that really effectively for you. So that's really our distinction and differentiator.
Well, I definitely want to unpack that because I liked how you said these correspondence dinner, White House correspondence dinner is a great example where we're getting as business owners or leaders, we're getting sometimes we're getting pitched or people saying, hey, we can get you exposure, this, that, and the other. But your point isn't in alignment with your overall strategy and vision of an organization, and it may or may not be. And
Right.
so having, like you said, thinking through this is really, really important. And so I'd love for you to maybe unpack a little bit more, Ronica, about your discovery process. How do you actually get this all set up and going in the right direction? Because like you said, you may have clients coming to you and thinking one thing, and you're like, hold on, we got to slow down a little bit and unpack this and walk us through how then you can figure out like what are these themes or what
Yeah.
are talking points.
No, absolutely. And the thing too, I'll just close the loop on the White House
Yeah.
Correspondents' Dinner thing because it can be extremely nuanced. Because
Mhm.
on the surface, one of the key things in my bio when I pitch myself to a client or to a podcast, or wherever it might be, is I'm a former journalist and former White House correspondent. So then you think, well, speaking about that should be, a no-brainer, but it's not. Because then if I'm speaking about it, then we're getting into most likely a political conversation
Mhm.
about all that's going on today with the White House Correspondents Association and the administration. And I think, well, that's not aligned with our agency values
Mhm.
to be political. And so
Mhm.
it's funny how you think, well, it seems obviously connected, but really, and that's where having that third party, it's sometimes it's hard to do that for yourself,
Yes. Yes.
right? So having that third party help you think through how, oh, well, this seems like it could be a fit, but actually it's not. That's where you can really avoid maybe, and like, I don't want to go on TV and get in a political conversation. We're not a political agency, right? And so,
Yes.
and so that's where we help. And that's where, to answer your next question about the discovery, can be extremely helpful, because
Mhm.
when we didn't always do a period of discovery, we've been in business now for almost 8 years. And in the beginning, we would kind of get to know the client and hear what they could talk about and send pitches. And what can happen when you do that is you can think something is obviously a fit and
Yep.
realize it's not. Okay.
Mhm.
So the period of discovery is formal. It is outlined and it is deliberate. And the idea is we are going to sit down with the client and we
Mhm.
are going to ask them lots of questions. We don't want them to know the answers. We just want to hear about what do they talk about? What are they experts in?
Mhm.
What's their story? How did you get here? And we're going to take that apart, right? Once we finish that first onboarding call, we're going to take that apart for them. We're going to turn it into what we think of as visually, like if you want to visualize it, pillars on a home. And we want to make sure we have at least 4 to 6 pillars for a client. We don't want 100. When I've had potential clients say to me, oh, well, you would want me as a client. I can talk about everything. And I'm
Anything.
like, okay, well, that's not that. We don't want that. We don't
Yes.
want you to talk about everything, right? So we want like a nice, solid group of topics. And then what we're going to do
Yes.
is we're going to say, okay, does your bio need to change or adjust at all for these 4 to 6 topics? What are
Mhm.
the key talking points that you would bring to the table for these? And then what are potential questions you can answer related to these topics? And so what that does is then we send that to the client. We say, let's talk about this. Does this feel aligned? Does
Mhm.
slight adjustment to your bio feel fake? Does it feel incomplete? Or does it feel appropriate to maybe adjust or highlight a certain feature in one and not in another, right? And so all of it is then when all that's completed and you say, oh, I could answer those questions. And, side note, we can't force a journalist to ask the questions that we suggest, but suggesting questions is a great way to set the tone of what you can talk about, right? So, so you think to yourself as a client, you say, oh, these feel aligned. These feel like questions where, I can't go on air and advertise my business for 3 to 4 minutes. But man, these questions would allow me to speak to my strengths, maybe naturally mention my business, right? These are all questions that set me up for success with my strategic goals in mind. And then us as a team, we all agree to them. And then we say, okay, let's build lists of specific reporters that would talk about these topics, that would cover these areas, podcasts that would have these conversations, right? So that's where that period of discovery is extremely valuable. And that idea of like a red flag for the agency that says guaranteed like X placements a month, like, well, first month, we should not be rushing to get you placements if we don't even know what the strategic vision of the account is. We don't know the full range and breadth of what you can look at. And also we might uncover what you don't want to talk about, right? It's like, okay, let's avoid that, right? So that's where the period of discovery, we have found clients actually love it. They find comfort in it. They feel more aligned. And then when we hit the ground running and we do get regular placements every month, which is fantastic for them. Right. They can look at them and say, wow, I know exactly the content theme that we talked about. Or if something is slightly off, we can go to them and say, we want to pitch this. It's similar to this. What do you think? Like we can make adjustments. It's not set in stone, but at least a strong foundation for the account so that we don't want surprises. We don't want chaos. Yes. We want you to feel aligned and focused on this end goal when you're navigating media, which is this crazy wild west space. And so at least we can give you the comfort to know that everything you're bringing to the table has been agreed upon and feels aligned and is with your vision.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned a few different things. Number one, I want to make sure everybody that's listening in, you guys can definitely connect with Ronica. We're going to make sure all of these links, if you guys want to find her articles on Inc. Or whatnot, we're going to put that in our show notes. And I really appreciated like how you said, Ronica, coming in as a third party, because I do the same thing at Steward Your Business, where we come in this, I'm looking at the people, organizational health, but the same thing of like, sometimes they're so close to what I heard you say is they're so close to things, they don't even realize like how to differentiate this. And so it sounds to me like they're just chasing down maybe opportunities. But what I hear you saying is you're really building a strong foundation that we can then plug into the opportunities that come in. And to me, I'm going to break down, I'm going to ask you a little bit later here on the podcast, because I want, as we're going through these problems, but what does it look like to invest in the time? Because this is not cheap. It's an investment, and we want to get the most out of this investment. This front end work that you're talking about, to me, it sounds much in alignment with what I do and very valuable. And sometimes people just want to go fast, but the fact that you're slowing them down and they're like, I'm looking after your best interests here, Ronica. That's what I hear. You and your team, we really want you. We're not just trying to get you just placements here and there, get you a booking, but really understand what are those core themes. And I actually was just talking to a client about this yesterday, Ronica, about what are their core values? What does that look like? Because if you're bringing in people into the organization and it's not clear, you're going to have a misalignment.
100%. Yeah. And that's true for bringing media opportunities, right? So whether it's people or opportunities or, whatever it might be, if you don't have a clear vision, then like, what are you doing? It just, again, I can't say it enough. It's just noise. And we don't need more noise, right?
We got plenty of noise, more than ever.
Right. And we want our clients to be able to take the opportunity and repurpose it and use it on newsletters, media platforms, and LinkedIn, and all these things. Well, if you're talking about something that's not even aligned with what you want to talk about, then it's like you can't even use it.
Right? You're like, come on. Where do you see the leaders themselves, digging a little deeper, struggle most when it comes to messaging? Where do you see them? Like you said, is they can speak to every topic, or they're just not clear, or they can't, there's not enough depth there, or, where do you feel like they're struggling? Because I figure if I talk with leaders too, and I'm trying to understand like how they can get it clear so that when they come work with you, they'll be in a better place. Obviously you work with them and you discover, but what do you commonly see problems or challenges that we can kind of help them be aware of or look to?
I think the hardest conversation to have would be when a leader maybe thinks that something is aligned to be promoted that's not, right? So sometimes they think their founder's story is maybe a little more compelling than it is. Sometimes they think they have an expertise in something where we don't have the bio to back up the expertise. So I think that answers your question. It's helping them. And look, we don't want to take a client where we can't build out the 4 to 6 pillars. That's bad business for us. It's not a good thing. So we want to find them, but the relationship with your publicist has to be built on trust. And sometimes it's not a good idea, right? And so, and for us, it's a balance, right? And I know you have business owners listening to this too. So some of this can be valuable just in terms, I call it like stakeholder management, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I might say to them, I'm not sure this is going to land, but if this really feels important to you, I don't think it's against your brand. I don't think it will hurt you, and we can certainly give it a try. Right. And so maybe it's just kind of setting the tone and letting them know that we don't really think this is going to be a big enough, wow enough thing. But if you're like, can't sleep at night because you didn't get to pitch this thing and you really want to, maybe it's just that conversation to say like, all right, we'll give it a shot, but this is why we're concerned about it. So that's how I can sometimes navigate those conversations, because PR is a really interesting thing to invest in, because even if it's on behalf of your business, there's always a face, right? And so whether that person stays with the business or leaves the business, it follows that individual forever. So we as publicists, we have to understand no matter what, we're dealing with a little bit of ego, a little bit of, personal feelings, right? That you can't separate. It's not like I made a widget and the widget doesn't work, right? And so I think those are the hardest conversations to have. And I have learned that it's important that we're not just like, too hard and rough. It's not a value add, because what that does is when you get in someone's head and give them that feeling of, well, if my story's not good, then maybe nothing is good, when that's not what you meant, but people interpret things very personally, then it destroys their confidence, and you need confidence to do these things. And so that is very challenging. I don't even remember what your question was, but I think like I started.
No, we're just talking about where they're getting the messaging wrong. Absolutely, yeah.
And so it's about guiding them towards. Here, I can close the loop with the question. It's about guiding them towards messaging that will resonate with the media, right? And so that is very important, and that's where, there's a lot of publicists who don't come from newsrooms, but I do think hiring people with experience in newsroom helps us do a better job of guiding our clients to choose pillars and agree on pillars that we see an opportunity to resonate with the media, right? And so that is very important when we're building that messaging. We're like, okay, well, maybe that's a cool story, or like maybe you did this cool thing, but I don't think newsrooms will care. And so it's figuring that out and making that connection. Yes.
Yeah, I think you're getting the what I want to say, you're getting those key pillars dialed in really tightly, because what comes to mind, I don't know, it isn't necessarily directly, there's follow-up PR to this, but what came to mind as you were saying that, Ronica, was the whole controversy. I don't know if you followed, but the CEO of McDonald's, he like ate this hamburger and he showed up and it didn't look like he really enjoyed it or whatever. And I just recently came across this, but there's some follow-up outfall. So if you're not authentically like leaning into this full force, and you're trying to put a theme or an emphasis, people kind of see through that.
So I actually, in pitching myself, I did some comment, like a quote in an article about that, providing thoughts on how he should handle that and what he should do next. And so I'm very familiar with it because I researched it. And, I advise that he have some fun with it. And like, something with it to laugh at himself, because and I also learned in researching it, he does this all the time, and he's like constantly criticized and made fun of. And so that was very interesting to me because I thought maybe he knows, but then that one happened to go viral, right?
Yeah.
It was a really interesting case study, but that was an example where there was a call for, commentary. And I thought, oh, this is a great fit. And this is very aligned with what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Where, like I said, the one on the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which seems so obvious,
Right.
it really wasn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like a perfect example in real time with myself as the skate, whatever, whatever I am.
The commentator.
Choose like what really makes sense. And that's why you really need to be thoughtful and strategic. And you can't get caught up in like a numbers game of like, well, I didn't get this. Well, every placement we do is dependent on the news cycle and decision makers. Like we don't control the biggest piece of the puzzle is the news, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where getting swept up in just results can do you a disservice in the long run, right? In the short term, you're like, look, I'm getting X for my investment. I have this. This is so great, but that's not the point.
Yeah. Well, that's a great lead into my follow-up question then is like, how do I know I'm actually ready for PR? To your point, if they're like, hey, what should a business owner or if they're responsible for their company, the marketing and business development, what should they know so that they are ready? What the questions should they be asking themselves, Ronica? They're like, now I should probably be looking and talking to somebody like you, Ronica, at Cleary Strategies so that they can say, because they're not getting, because they're being pitched all the time. I'm sure they're getting different people. They're like, hey, they don't know who I am. They don't know what I'm about. So what would you say to that person? Like, how do I know? How do I evaluate I'm even ready for PR?
Yeah, for sure. I get that. I mean, I think most businesses could benefit from the service, but not everybody's ready for it. And for some, it's certainly a more obvious priority to focus on than others. So a couple things. I mean, this is really basic, but you need to make sure that you have the time or you have someone on your team who has the time to support you with talking points, quotes, whatever it might be, because not all the CEOs write all their answers, but they then have the resources to have someone else do it for them. Or if they don't have the resources, they know they can carve out the time. That's very important. The news cycle moves very quickly. And so if you want to comment like on the CEO of McDonald's awkwardly eating a burger or whatever it was, the story is over in a flash, right? And so of course, there'll be another one, but that's why our slogan is don't miss the moment. The idea is we will make sure you don't miss the moment in the news cycle that you would be a great fit for. Okay. So time and resources, of course, and then of course, resources to pay for the services. They're usually, you do not need to pay New York City, like retainers of $15,000 a month to get good PR, but it still costs money, even if you don't need that kind of investment, which we're not. And then I guess the other thing that we actually decided to offer, because I do think some people have a little trepidation about signing on to like a 6-month or 1-year contract. We offer that period of discovery as a one-off. So if you say, I just don't know, I need to see the pillars, I need to see where we go with this investment. I'm not sure what they are. We will do it for you for just the month. And then at the end of the month, you can say, let's dive in. I love this. Or, wow, that's what I'm going to talk about. Like, I don't like any of that. Right. And so you can do that. So that's not an answer that's broad ranging, but that's how we've sort of responded to that, because we realize it is kind of a scary, unknown investment. It's not something like a bookkeeper where you know what the result is. And so that's how we meet people where they are and give them that option.
I love that, Ronica. Well, it's similar to my business model, Steward Your Business, where we're going in and doing an organizational health assessment, and we're kind of seeing what's going on. What are the real pain points? And to your point, that's why I wanted you to have on the podcast, because here, having guests like yourself here is creating value. And the folks that you guys are listening in, you're getting to hear from somebody that's been doing this for years. It's a seasoned expert, and you can pick her brain. And again, I want you guys to make sure you reach out, connect with her, whether it's on LinkedIn or through our website. We're all connected on our YouTube channels as well. So there's lots of different ways you can connect it and learn more. But I think that's such a value that you bring on, a little different angle to it. The other thing I wanted to dig into with you is, you mentioned this earlier, but you come along your clients for the 6 months or a year, which is great. You build this foundation, but you bring, not everybody has this, what I think is really unique is this journalism edge. And I would call it kind of your superpower, if you will, and the team. But how has that shaped your approach. Maybe if we haven't talked about this earlier, but because I feel like that is unique. And there's some folks that do PR that have never been a journalist. They haven't done this worked in that space before. And you have that. So yeah, just share us a little bit more about your particular.
Of course. Yeah, you're primarily going to find people with backgrounds in like a big agency, right? They start there, or they start in journalism. I am very partial to those who've started in journalism. We might have a bigger hill to climb to learn about the best like reporting software, but boy, do we understand like the cadence of a newsroom. And it's not even just being on the receiving end of a reporter's inbox with hundreds of pitches a day. It's simple things like, when do assignment desks meet for weekend shows? Like when does a newsroom go into overdrive and we know the whole show is going to be thrown away and everything is going to cover X? Like there's just an understanding of the heart and soul of a newsroom, which is very ruthless, very competitive, and very hardworking, right? And so it's I think it's essential. We have people on our team who don't come from newsrooms, but really not many, because I just think it's, you just understand. I can't explain it. I would have never, I remember when I first walked into news, it blows your mind, right? It's just a really kind of wild experience, and understanding how quick it moves, how fast it moves. Like you can't pick something after it's happened. It's old news. You need to anticipate things, but how can you know what's going to happen if it hasn't happened yet? Like it's really bizarre. And so I just think that that's one of those skills that I'm sure there are great publicists out there that have never worked in a newsroom and have figured it out over time. But I do think the skill is deeper and more intrinsic if you've lived it, and you can guide your clients in that way. And, the news world is a huge part of our identity as an agency. And in our mission statement, when I built the mission statement, our mission is not just to serve our clients. Our mission is actually twofold. We serve our clients and we serve the media. And that was a very deliberate choice. And that came from early on in our agency founding, because I don't come from agency life, right? And I do remember being on the receiving end of pitches, thinking, stop nagging me. You didn't read my bio. Like, I'm a political journalist. Like, why are you sending me a pitch on the flower show? Like, it's just like, what is going on? And so my mindset when I started was like, call your friends and ask for favors, because I was sort of used to that, right? And so what I suddenly clicked one day was like, wait a second. We are actually doing them a favor. We are actually making their lives easier by understanding what they do, understanding how newsrooms work, and then presenting our clients in a way that can actually do their job for them. And so that I think is the biggest sort of like news leftover that's like in my day-to-day life that I think every day, like let me think like a producer. Let me produce this segment for the newsrooms we're going to pitch it to. Let me build this pitch with all the elements the newsroom would need to do it as easily as possible on behalf of my client, with their pillars in mind, with their, with their goals. And then let me send it to a newsroom that needs that. And boy, that's when magic is made. Fantastic. Because we're serving the client and the newsroom is getting the pitch going, oh, thank God, you just filled my Saturday morning show. This is what I needed. You knew what I needed before I even opened my inbox, right? And so that's how being a journalist really helps us do our job.
Yeah, your help. So it's not just getting the stories out there, but what I hear you say, it's helping them tell the stories that survive this competitive, crazy environment. Can it survive? Can it make it to the actual show or the publication? Because it could just die there. You watch enough TV. I mean, you've lived it, but if you watch enough TV shows or movies where you're like, I've got this great story, and it just dies, it never makes it there, right? Everybody's got something. And it's like, how is it compelling enough to get there through that environment? And you've lived it, and you were on the other side. And I love that you brought that to your company in Cleary Strategies, Ronica. And it's the same thing I do as a biologist, project manager for years, and as a subject matter expert. I realized, okay, how can I bring this into helping teams now and organizations? To your point, because we lived it. And that's something you can't even, you've got technology in the eye that can't be replaced. It's so valuable. And so those of you that are listening in, if you don't have somebody like Ronica that has lived it, then you're missing out. I think I love that you offer that 30-day exploratory, period where we can get clear on the themes and see if that works, and you keep going, and then come alongside them. And to me, once we get there, we get that clear. One of the things you mentioned, I think even in our pre-call, was like, if we can get this set up, then you can have it kind of systematized, and you can build this. So then, like you said, you don't miss it. That's what I heard you say. Don't miss those moments, because now we've got something going. Is that where you see the clients really have success over the long haul?
Absolutely. Yeah. I do run my agency like an assembly line. The whole thing is systematized.
Mm-hmm.
The stereotype, like PR is chaos and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only time PR, even when you're prepared, might be chaos, would be in like a horrible crisis, right?
Yeah.
But really, day-to-day PR, when you're doing pitching on behalf of an organization where you're trying to generate positive press, it should not be chaotic. It shouldn't. And so we build those pillars, right, in that period of discovery. And then what we do around the 15th or the 20th of every month, we sit down internally, we look at the client roster, we can keep the pillars in mind. We look ahead at the month ahead. We're like, okay, what's happening on the calendar? Is it Nurses Week is in May? Okay. Like, we're just thinking about that. So we know we have a client who works, tangentially to the space.
Yep.
Can we align them with the themes that exist already?
Mm-hmm.
So then we say, okay, we have these set of talking points. I think they align with Nurses Week. We're going to check with them. They're already written. What do we need to adjust? How do we open it? And that's where, and then they say yes, or they say we want to make a small adjustment or whatever. But that's where it starts to just work very smoothly and simply, and with just organization. Like we all have lives. I like the expression that says, I didn't leave my 9 to 5 to work a 6 to 6. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
nobody's like winning the award for working the most chaotic schedule in life.
Right.
And my team, our clients, they don't hire us to make their lives more difficult. Right. And I think that many times, like, PR can feel like a thing that suddenly made your life more chaotic. And so it's very important to me that they feel like they're a part of something that works and flows. And of course, once in a while, like, something's going to happen and it's going to be a little stressful. Like I often refer to the example of when Silicon Valley Bank fell. And I remember, like, I had goosebumps like all over my body, because I thought, this is huge. This will be national. And anybody on our client roster who can talk about money or banking is going to be needed. And so it's going to be 24 to 48 hours of chaos, right? So of course it happens, but generally speaking, from day to day, that's not how it should be. And so the systems in place, the pillars as a foundation, all of that allows us to attempt to work into your lives. I always say, like, I don't want you to spend, if you have so much time for PR, I want the majority of the time you spend, once we onboard, I want it to be with media opportunities, not with me, like talking about what, and so it's just very important that we kind of build these systems so that our clients just feel like, wow, that time I invested, that money I invested, was the majority of it was with cool opportunities where I shared my story, where I talked about my vision, where I added some value to the discourse, and I could then use that and send it to my social team and have cooler LinkedIn posts and have better opportunities to touch base with clients. Like, that feels great. Not, like, we're meeting every week to come up with ideas and we're all going crazy and this one didn't land and we're running around like, like, it's like, what is that? So that it's very important to me that our clients have that energy that we have, that we take to their accounts, and that it feels really great.
That's wonderful.
Oh my gosh, this is a big burden of time.
No. It sounds to me, like you said, so the only disruption, if you will, would be the opportunity. Hey, here's your opportunity that we've been looking for to get on. And it's not the process. It's just, hey, the opportunity is here. Fantastic.
I love how you summarize that. It shouldn't, the disruption to your life shouldn't be the process. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, it just shouldn't.
It's an opportunity here. Yeah, you've been working so hard for, getting all these things lined up. You're like, great, it is now aligned. Fantastic. We can step right into it, Exactly. I know we're getting here, Ronica. This has been so powerful. We're getting into the podcast. And what really stands out to me is that PR really isn't just about getting attention, but it's being ready for that attention, like we just talked about. And for those of you that are listening and maybe you thought, oh, it's just about visibility, maybe you should be looking at and saying, would my message actually hold up? And I should talk to Ronica and her team at Cleary Strategies. Ronica, as we're listening, as we're sharing with this, our listeners, and I always like to ask our guests to share, what would you empower our listener, whether they're the business owner or leader, to do? We've covered a lot of ground, but what could they do as a kind of a self-assessment, a self-check, to say, take what we've just listened to, what we've shared, and apply it to themselves, apply it to their company, and hopefully move them in the right direction forward, whether they're working with PR now or they want to get in a place where they would be having somebody help them with their PR.
One thing I think that is a great step is not in like a weird competitive, like gross way, but look at what your competition is doing and look at how they're putting themselves out there. And this isn't to feel threatened or competitive or ugly or mean-spirited, but there's usually room in the media landscape for more than one expert in X or Y or Z. And you can learn from where they're putting themselves out there. You can also say like, oh, I wouldn't do that. Or, oh, that feels great. And so I think that's a great kind of first step. And it also, look, a PR agency might come up with ideas that have never been done before. Of course, for creatives, that's really the fundamental core of public relations, is actually creativity. And so it doesn't mean it can't happen, but I do think it's super helpful to see where people are in the media landscape who talk about what you could talk about. And it gives you an idea if that would feel exciting. Does that feel impossible? Why does it feel impossible? And so asking yourself those questions and just having kind of an honest dialogue with yourself, because at the end of the day, I mean,
that's a great problem.
If doing an interview like makes you want to throw up and sick to your stomach and you don't function for 3 days, maybe this isn't the right thing, right? But maybe you never thought that through until you watch somebody and you imagine yourself there. But if you imagine yourself there and say, oh my gosh, I have so many better things to say. I could have done that.
Yes.
One. That's like a little signal internally that says, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to think about this. So that would be my suggestion.
Great prompt, Ronica. Real pleasure having you here on the podcast and sharing your insights with us today. It really was great. And I'm hoping the listeners have gotten some value here, because I think I got some great takeaways today, but really wonderful having you here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, you're listening in here. If you found value in today's conversation, of course, we appreciate you subscribing, following, liking along. Leave any comments. We'll make sure Ronica and her team get it at Cleary Strategies. Make sure you guys follow along, connect with her as well. If you're looking to build a business with stronger alignment, clearer messaging, a team that can actually support growth, that's what we do at Steward Your Business. We love working with folks like Ronica at Cleary Strategies, and we thank you guys for being a part of this conversation today. Until next time, be well. Thanks everybody for listening in.